I'm Donna, 58 years old, and I've been working two jobs just to make ends meet since retiring from teaching. When my millionaire son invited me to his Christmas party at his mansion, I was overjoyed. I never expected that evening would change everything when he hugged me and asked, "Enjoying the $7,000 a month, Mom?" A question that left me completely stunned. Before I continue this heartbreaking story of family betrayal, let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to hear more real-life stories that will make you rethink what family truly means. My life before all this drama was simple but fulfilling. For over 30 years, I taught third graders at Westfield Elementary School in our small Midwestern town. The children were my joy, their bright faces lighting up my classroom every morning. My husband Frank and I had only one child, our son Jacob, who became my whole world after Frank died suddenly of a heart attack when Jacob was just 12. Being a single mother wasn't easy, especially on a teacher's salary. I remember countless nights sitting at our kitchen table with bills spread out before me, calculating how to stretch every dollar. I cut coupons, religiously shopped seasonal sales, and rarely bought anything new for myself. But I made sure Jacob never felt deprived. "Mom, you don't have to pack my lunch every day. I can get school lunch," 16-year-old Jacob once said, noticing my exhaustion. "Nonsense," I replied while preparing his favorite turkey sandwich. "This saves us money, and I know exactly what you're eating." What Jacob didn't know was that I was sometimes skipping meals myself to ensure he had everything he needed. His education was my priority. I put away a little money each month into a college fund determined that my boy would have opportunities I never had. When Jacob scored high on his SATs and received an acceptance letter from Princeton University with a partial scholarship, I cried tears of joy. The financial aid didn't cover everything, so I took out a second mortgage on our modest home to help with tuition. Those 4 years were tough financially, but seeing Jacob thrive made every sacrifice worthwhile. After graduating with honors in finance, Jacob landed a job at a prestigious investment firm in Chicago. His starting salary was already triple what I made after 30 years of teaching. I was so proud watching him in his new suit briefcase in hand, ready to conquer the financial world. Then he met Stephanie during a charity gala his firm sponsored. She came from old money. Her father owned a chain of luxury hotels across the East Coast. Stephanie was strikingly beautiful with her sleek blonde hair and designer clothes. When Jacob first brought her to meet me, she was all smiles and compliments. "Your home is so charming, Donna," she said, looking around my small living room with what I now recognize was barely concealed disdain. "So cozy and quaint." Despite my reservations about her sincerity, I was happy that Jacob seemed in love. They married after just 8 months of dating in an extravagant ceremony at one of her father's beachfront hotels. The wedding cost more than my entire teaching career earnings. I felt out of place among the wealthy guests, but smiled through it all for Jacob's sake. With Stephanie's family connections, Jacob's career accelerated rapidly. He moved from investment advisor to partner in just 3 years. They purchased a sprawling mansion in Highland Park, one of Chicago's wealthiest suburbs, nearly 2 hours from my home. Their visits became increasingly rare. Meanwhile, my health started declining. Years of standing in classrooms had taken a toll on my back, and arthritis was making it difficult to write on the blackboard. At 55, I reluctantly took early retirement on my doctor's recommendation. My pension was significantly reduced because I hadn't reached full retirement age, and medical bills were piling up. Social Security barely covered my mortgage and utilities. After 3 months of retirement, I realized I needed to work again. I found a part-time position at Barnes & Noble during the day, arranging books and helping customers find their next great read. In the evenings, I cleaned offices in a downtown building. Between both jobs, I was making just enough to survive, but it was exhausting. Jacob called occasionally, always talking about their exotic vacations or the new car he'd purchased. I never mentioned my financial struggles. I didn't want him to think of his mother as a burden. "How's retirement treating you, Mom?" he would ask. "Oh, it's wonderful." I'd lie. "I'm finally reading all those books I never had time for." I never told him about the nights I came home with my back screaming in pain after scrubbing office floors, or how I had to choose between filling my arthritis prescription and paying the electric bill some months. I noticed the change in Jacob about 2 years after his wedding. Our weekly phone calls dwindled to monthly, then to special occasions only. When I would call him, Stephanie would often answer, explaining that Jacob was too busy with work to talk. "He's in meetings all day, Donna," she would say with artificial sweetness. You know how important his clients are. On the rare occasions when I visited their mansion, Stephanie would make excuses to cut our visits short. Once I overheard her talking to Jacob in their kitchen while I waited in the living room. "Your mother has been here for 3 hours already," she whispered harshly. "We have dinner with the Williamsons tonight. Can't you tell her to leave?" Jacob's reply was muffled, but he emerged minutes later suggesting it might be time for me to head home because traffic would be getting bad soon. It was only 2 in the afternoon. During a baby shower for their first child, I accidentally overheard Stephanie talking to her friends in the garden. "Jacob's mother is so clingy," she said with a laugh. "She calls all the time asking when she can visit. It's exhausting dealing with her neediness." I was stunned. I had called exactly twice in the previous month, both times to ask about Stephanie's pregnancy. I felt tears stinging my eyes but blinked them away. This was Stephanie's special day, and I wouldn't ruin it by confronting her lies. As my financial situation worsened, I started selling family heirlooms. My grandmother's silver tea set went first, followed by the pearl necklace Frank had given me on our 10th anniversary. Each item sold felt like losing a piece of my history, but I needed the money for medical bills after falling on the ice and fracturing my wrist. The fracture meant I couldn't work at the bookstore for 6 weeks. I called Jacob once during this time, hoping maybe he could help with just a small loan until I got back on my feet. "Jacob, honey," I started hesitantly, "I've had a bit of an accident." "Mom, I'm so sorry, but I'm walking into an important meeting," he interrupted. "Can I call you back?" He never did. My neighbor Martha was the one who discovered how badly I was struggling. She found me trying to shovel snow with my good arm and insisted on helping. Martha was a retired nurse with a no-nonsense attitude and a heart of gold. "Donna, where's that son of yours while you're out here possibly injuring your other wrist?" She demanded. The concern in her eyes broke something in me, and I found myself telling her everything. The 2 jobs, selling my belongings, the growing distance between Jacob and me. "Have you told Jacob how bad things are?" she asked. "I don't want to burden him," I admitted. "He has his own family to worry about." Martha's expression hardened. "That boy needs a reality check. You worked yourself to the bone to give him everything, and now he can't even check on his mother." "Stephanie doesn't make it easy," I said weakly. "Stephanie isn't your son," Martha replied firmly. "Jacob is a grown man who's responsible for his own actions. You need to talk to him, Donna. Tell him the truth about your situation." I promised Martha I would, but the right moment never seemed to come. Each time I thought about calling Jacob with my problems, I remembered how busy and important his life had become. Would he even care? Or worse, would he think I was just after his money? One cold December morning, about a week before Christmas, my phone rang. I was surprised to see Jacob's name on the caller ID. "Mom?" His voice sounded cheerful. "How are you?" "I'm fine, honey," I said automatically, hiding the fact that my heating bill was overdue and I was wearing 3 sweaters inside my house. "How are you and the family?" "We're great. Listen, Stephanie and I are hosting a Christmas party at our place next Saturday. Nothing fancy, just some friends and colleagues. We'd love for you to come." My heart leaped at the invitation. It had been months since I'd seen Jacob or my grandchildren. "I'd love to," I said, trying not to sound too eager. "Great. It starts at 6. See you then." After hanging up, I sat on my worn sofa feeling a flicker of hope. Maybe this was a chance to reconnect with Jacob. Maybe Stephanie was finally warming up to me. Maybe things could be different. The next week, I scraped together enough money to buy small gifts for Jacob, Stephanie, and my 3 grandchildren. Nothing extravagant. A leather-bound journal for Jacob, he'd always loved writing as a boy, a scented candle set for Stephanie, and books for the children. I wrapped each present carefully in the prettiest paper I could afford and tied them with ribbons saved from previous Christmases. Transportation was my next challenge. My old Honda had finally died 6 months earlier, and I couldn't afford to replace it. Public transit didn't reach Highland Park, and a taxi would cost a fortune. "I'll drive you," Martha offered when I explained my dilemma. "I'm not doing anything that evening anyway." "But it's a 2-hour drive each way," I protested. "So I'll bring a book and wait, or find a coffee shop nearby. Don't argue with me, Donna. You're going to that party." The morning of the party, I stood before my closet wondering what to wear. Everything I owned looked shabby compared to the designer clothes Stephanie and her friends wore. I finally settled on a dark green dress I'd bought years ago for a school fundraiser. It was a bit loose now. I'd lost weight working 2 jobs. but it was the nicest thing I had. I spent extra time on my makeup, carefully covering the dark circles under my eyes. I set my hair in curlers and even splurged on a new lipstick. Looking in the mirror, I saw a tired woman trying her best to look presentable. "You look lovely," Martha assured me when she picked me up. "Those pearls are beautiful." I touched the small pearl earrings, the last piece of jewelry I hadn't sold. They were my mother's. The drive to Highland Park was filled with my nervous chatter. Would the children remember me? Would Stephanie be welcoming? Would I fit in with their wealthy friends? As Martha's car approached Jacob's neighborhood, the houses grew larger and more elaborate. Christmas decorations adorned every property. Not simple strings of lights like in my neighborhood, but professional displays that must have cost thousands. Jacob's mansion was the most impressive of all, with its stone facade and circular driveway. Every tree in the front yard sparkled with white lights. Large wreaths hung on each window, and a magnificent spruce tree was visible through the front windows. "Text me when you're ready to leave," Martha said as I gathered my bag of gifts. "And Donna, have a good time. You deserve it." I nodded, suddenly too nervous to speak, and walked up the long driveway to the front door. A woman in uniform, a housekeeper or server I assumed, opened the door before I could ring the bell. "Good evening, ma'am. May I take your coat?" Inside the foyer, open to a grand living room filled with people in expensive attire. A massive Christmas tree towered in one corner, adorned with color-coordinated ornaments and ribbons. A string quartet played holiday music in another corner. Servers circulated with trays of champagne and hors d'oeuvres. I clutched my bag of simply wrapped gifts, suddenly feeling embarrassed by their humble appearance. Everyone else had brought presents in designer bags or elaborate wrapping. Standing awkwardly near the entrance, I searched the crowd for a familiar face. Most of the guests were young couples laughing and chatting with drinks in hand. I felt every one of my 58 years in that moment out of place and forgotten. Then I spotted Jacob across the room, handsome in a tailored suit, talking animatedly to a group of men. He hadn't seen me yet. Stephanie stood nearby in a stunning red dress that probably cost more than 6 months of my rent, smiling and nodding at whatever the woman beside her was saying. I took a deep breath and made my way through the crowd, smiling politely at strangers who barely glanced my way. Just as I reached the center of the room, Jacob looked up and saw me. His face lit up with a smile that reminded me of the little boy who used to run to greet me after school. "Mom," he called, breaking away from his group. "You made it." Jacob crossed the room and embraced me warmly. The familiar smell of his cologne, something expensive and woodsy, brought tears to my eyes. For a moment, he was just my little boy again. "Let me look at you," he said, holding me at arm's length. Then, still smiling broadly, he asked the question that would change everything. "Enjoying the $7,000 a month, Mom?" The room seemed to tilt around me. $7,000. What was he talking about? "I know it's not much compared to what we make," he continued, unaware of my confusion. "But Stephanie reminded me that with your pension and Social Security, it should be more than enough for you to live comfortably." My mouth went dry. I was making barely $1,200 a month between my pension, Social Security, and my 2 jobs combined. $7,000 would have been a fortune. Enough to quit my evening cleaning job, fix my house, and actually enjoy retirement. Before I could form a response, Stephanie glided over to join us, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "Donna, how lovely to see you," she said, air kissing near my cheek. "You look rested." Jacob turned to his wife, still beaming. "I was just asking Mom how she's enjoying the monthly transfers." "Oh, yes," Stephanie said, her voice oddly tight. $7,000 every month for the past year. A nice supplement to your retirement, isn't it, Donna?" I looked from Jacob's expectant face to Stephanie's strained smile and knew something was terribly wrong. The truth tumbled out before I could stop it. "Son, I'm working 2 jobs just to make ends meet," I said quietly. "I haven't received any money from you." Jacob's smile faltered. "What, but I've been transferring $7,000 to your account on the first of every month since last Christmas. I have the statements right here on my phone." Stephanie suddenly choked on her champagne, coughing violently. A nearby guest patted her back while Jacob pulled out his phone and began scrolling through his banking app. "See?" He turned the screen toward me, showing a list of transfers to an account labeled Mom's Assistance Fund. I stared at the screen, my mind racing. Jacob, that's not my account number. The color drained from his face. What? My checking account ends in 4372. This one ends in 4377. Jacob's expression changed from confusion to shock as the implication sank in. Beside him, Stephanie had recovered from her coughing fit, but looked as though she might be sick. There must be some mistake, she said quickly. The bank must have the wrong digits. For 12 consecutive months, Jacob asked, his voice low and dangerous. His eyes darted between his phone and Stephanie's increasingly pale face. By now, several nearby guests had fallen silent, sensing the tension. I wanted to disappear to spare Jacob the embarrassment of the scene at his party, but it was too late. Who owns this account, Stephanie? Jacob asked, his voice barely above a whisper. She laughed nervously, twisting her diamond bracelet. How would I know? It's probably just a clerical error. We can sort it out tomorrow. A server approached with a tray of drinks, oblivious to the drama unfolding. Champagne? Jacob ignored him, his eyes never leaving his wife's face. Stephanie, whose account is this? The silence stretched between them, thick with accusation. Finally, Stephanie grabbed Jacob's arm and hissed, Not here. Let's discuss this privately. Without another word, she turned and walked briskly toward Jacob's home office, her high heels clicking sharply on the marble floor. Jacob gave me an apologetic look. I'm sorry, Mom. I need to figure this out. Help yourself to food and drinks. I'll be right back. As he followed Stephanie, whispers erupted among the nearby guests. I stood alone, still clutching my bag of gifts as curious eyes darted in my direction. A kind-faced woman approached me. The food table is this way, she said gently, guiding me toward a lavish spread at the back of the room. I'm Laura, by the way. I work with Jacob. I followed her numbly, my appetite gone, but grateful for her kindness. I'm Donna Jacob's mother. I know, she smiled. Jacob talks about you often. This small kindness nearly broke me. If Jacob talked about me, why hadn't he checked on me? How could he believe I was receiving thousands of dollars without ever mentioning it or thanking him? As Laura helped me fill a small plate with food I couldn't taste, raised voices echoed from down the hall. Jacob and Stephanie were arguing loudly enough that their voices carried despite the closed door and the string quartet's music. Curiosity and concern propelled me toward the hallway. Several other guests were already lingering there, pretending to admire artwork while straining to hear the argument. I should have returned to the party, should have given them privacy, but my feet carried me forward until I stood outside the office door. You've been stealing from my mother for a year. Jacob's voice was incredulous. How could you do this? It's not stealing, Stephanie fired back. I was protecting our family by taking money meant for my mother, money she desperately needed while working 2 jobs at her age. She was fine. She never complained, did she? Never asked for money, because she's too proud, because she didn't want to be a burden. There was a pause, then Stephanie's voice turned calculating. The account is in both our names, Jacob. Technically, I didn't steal anything. Don't play lawyer with me. You knew that money was for my mother. You watched her struggle while pocketing $7,000 a month that could have changed her life. You don't understand what it's been like, Stephanie said, her voice breaking. Your mother this, your mother that. You're always comparing me to her. Mom made the best pot roast. Mom always kept the house so clean. Mom worked so hard to put me through college. So this was, revenge jealousy. I told you she didn't need the money. I told you she was doing fine on her pension. And I trusted you. I trusted you to set up the account to make sure she was taken care of. What about taking care of me, of our children? That money paid for Ellie's horse riding lessons and Tyler's summer camp. We make over $1 million a year, Stephanie. We didn't need that money. It's the principle. Why should your mother get handouts when my parents worked for everything they have? I backed away from the door, my heart pounding. The truth was worse than I could have imagined. Stephanie hadn't just intercepted money meant for me. She'd actively blocked Jacob from helping me while watching me struggle. The memory of selling Frank's watch to pay for my blood pressure medication last winter flashed through my mind. The nights I'd gone to bed hungry to save money. The pain in my back after cleaning offices until midnight, too tired to even cry. All while Stephanie was using my money for luxury activities for my grandchildren. Children I rarely got to see because their mother kept them away from me. I returned to the main room in a daze, the voices from the office still ringing in my ears. The party continued around me, guests laughing and chatting, oblivious to how my world had just shattered. Stephanie had stolen from me. But worse, much worse, she had stolen a year of relationship with my son. She had painted me as doing fine without his help while depicting herself as the dutiful wife managing his mother's finances. As I stood there, invisible, among the wealthy guests, something shifted inside me. The hurt and shock crystallized into a different feeling resolve. I had spent my life putting others first, my students, my husband, my son. I had accepted less to give Jacob more. I had stayed silent to keep the peace. But not anymore. I made my way back to the center of the living room where most of the guests had gathered. My hands were shaking, but my voice was steady when I tapped a spoon against my water glass. The gentle chiming sound caught the attention of a few nearby guests who fell silent. Others noticed and followed suit until the room grew quiet, except for the soft music of the string quartet, which trailed off as the musicians sensed something happening. "Excuse me," I said, my voice stronger than I expected. "I'm Donna Turner, Jacob's mother." All eyes turned to me, some curious, some pitying, some merely polite. I took a deep breath. "I want to thank you all for including me in this beautiful celebration. It's not often that I get to see how my son lives now." A murmur of approval rippled through the crowd. Someone started to applaud, but I continued speaking. "Many of you probably know Jacob from work or social circles. You know him as a successful investment banker, a family man, a generous host. What you might not know is where he came from." The room grew completely silent. I could see Jacob and Stephanie emerging from the hallway at the back, drawn by the unusual quiet. I was a third-grade teacher for 30 years. After my husband died, I raised Jacob alone. There were many nights I went to bed hungry so that Jacob could have enough to eat. I remortgaged our home to help pay for his college education. Every sacrifice was worth it to see him succeed. Jacob was moving through the crowd toward me now, his face a mixture of concern and confusion. Stephanie trailed behind him, her expression thunderous. "What I didn't know until tonight," I continued, "is that my son has been trying to support me for the past year. He's been sending $7,000 monthly to an account he believed was mine." Gasps and whispers rippled through the audience. I saw recognition dawn on several faces, colleagues of Jacob who were putting the pieces together. "The truth is, I've been working 2 jobs since retiring due to health problems. At 58, I'm shelving books during the day and cleaning offices at night. I've sold family heirlooms to pay medical bills. Meanwhile, the money Jacob intended for me has been—" I paused, searching for the right words. "Redirected elsewhere." Jacob reached me. Then his eyes filled with anguish. "Mom, you don't have to do this." "Yes, I do," I said quietly. "For both of us." I turned back to the gathered guests. "I'm not telling you this to embarrass my son or to gain your sympathy. I'm telling you because the truth matters, because family should be built on honesty, not deception." Stephanie pushed through the last few people separating us, her face flushed with anger and embarrassment. "This is inappropriate," she hissed. "You're ruining our party." "No, Stephanie," I replied evenly. "You ruined it when you stole from me and lied to your husband." The collective intake of breath from the guests was audible. Stephanie's face contorted with rage. "How dare you accuse me in my own home?" she shouted. "Jacob, are you going to let her speak to me like this?" All eyes turned to Jacob, who stood frozen between his mother and his wife. I saw the conflict in his face, the loyalty to the woman he married warring with the evidence of her betrayal. "Is it true?" he asked Stephanie, his voice carrying in the silent room. "Did you divert the money on purpose?" "We can discuss this later," she said through gritted teeth. "No. Tell me now. Did you deliberately keep my mother's money from her while watching her work 2 jobs at her age?" Stephanie's composure cracked. "She didn't need your handouts. My parents built their fortune from nothing. Why should she get easy money?" "Easy?" I couldn't help interjecting. "There was nothing easy about working 60-hour weeks as a single mother to raise your husband. Nothing easy about the arthritis in my hands from decades of grading papers. Nothing easy about cleaning toilets at midnight to afford my heart medication." Jacob's face hardened as he looked at his wife. "The account," he said. "It was yours, wasn't it? Not a bank error." Stephanie's silence was all the confirmation he needed. "Get out," Jacob said quietly. "What?" Stephanie's eyes widened. "Get out of the living room. Go upstairs. This party is over." "You can't be serious. You're choosing her over me, over your children's mother." Jacob looked around at the stunned faces of their friends and colleagues. I apologize, everyone, but I'm going to have to ask you to leave. Family emergency. Murmurs of understanding rose as guests began gathering their coats and bags. Many cast sympathetic glances my way as they filed out. Some stopped to squeeze Jacob's shoulder or whisper words of support. Laura, the kind woman who had helped me earlier, approached and pressed a business card into my hand. "Call me if you need anything," she said quietly. "Jacob's a good man. He'll do the right thing." Within minutes, the grand living room had emptied except for Jacob, Stephanie, and me. The servers discreetly disappeared into the kitchen, leaving us alone with the remnants of the party: half-empty glasses, abandoned plates of food, the still glittering Christmas tree, witnessing our family's implosion. "Jacob, you're overreacting," Stephanie said, her tone switching from anger to placation. "It was just a misunderstanding about accounts." "Stop lying," he said wearily. "Just stop." He turned to me, his eyes filled with remorse. "Mom, I had no idea. I thought I was taking care of you. You thought I was living comfortably while I was actually struggling," I finished for him. "It's not your fault, Jacob. You tried to help. But I should have checked. I should have called more, visited more. How could I not know my own mother was working 2 jobs?" Stephanie interrupted, her voice cold. "If you side with her on this, Jacob, we're done. I'll take the kids, and—" "You'll do no such thing," Jacob cut her off. "You've stolen nearly $100,000. That's a felony, Stephanie. Do you really want to threaten me right now?" Her face paled. The implications of her actions were finally sinking in. "Go upstairs," Jacob repeated. "We'll discuss this tomorrow. With our lawyers." Stephanie looked from Jacob to me, searching for any sign of weakness or forgiveness. Finding none, she turned and stalked up the grand staircase, her red dress aflame against the white marble. When she was gone, Jacob collapsed onto the nearest sofa and put his head in his hands. "I'm so sorry, Mom. So incredibly sorry." I sat beside him and took his hand, the same hand I'd held when he crossed streets as a child, when he'd graduated high school, when he'd walked down the aisle. "We have a lot to talk about," I said gently. "But first, could I see my grandchildren? It's been months." Jacob looked up, his eyes red-rimmed but determined. "Yes, and then we're going to fix this. All of it." As he led me upstairs to the children's rooms, I felt something I hadn't experienced in a long time: hope. In the weeks following that disastrous Christmas party, my life transformed in ways I never could have imagined. Jacob moved quickly and decisively once he understood what had happened. The day after the party, he drove me home personally, not to my small house, but to his lawyer's office. There, he filed the paperwork to recover the stolen funds and began divorce proceedings against Stephanie. "But the children," I protested. "Don't do this just for me." "This isn't just for you, Mom," Jacob said firmly. "It's for them, too. I don't want them growing up with someone who thinks it's acceptable to steal from family." The evidence against Stephanie was overwhelming. Bank records showed she had created an account similar to mine and had been transferring the monthly deposits into her personal shopping fund. Confronted with the documentation, she agreed to return the money rather than face criminal charges. Jacob found a small but beautiful house just 10 minutes from my place. He moved in temporarily while the divorce proceedings began, bringing the children to stay with him half the time. "I want them close to their grandmother," he told me. "They've missed out on too much already." I finally got to know my grandchildren properly. 8-year-old Tyler was quiet like his father had been, with a passion for building elaborate structures with Legos. 6-year-old Ellie was fiercely independent, reminding me of myself at that age. And 3-year-old Michael was a bundle of energy who loved to be read to. When Jacob offered to replace all the family heirlooms I had sold, I declined. "The money is enough," I told him. "I don't need things." What I didn't tell him was that those physical objects had served their purpose. They had helped me survive when I needed them most. Their absence was a reminder of my resilience. With the recovered funds, I was able to pay off my mortgage, catch up on medical treatments I'd been postponing, and even put some money away for the future. I quit my evening cleaning job but kept working part-time at the bookstore because I genuinely enjoyed being around books and people. "You don't have to work at all, Mom," Jacob insisted. "I know," I replied, "but I want to. It gives me purpose. Just not 60 hours a week anymore." Stephanie fought the divorce proceedings bitterly at first, threatening to take the children and move back to her parents' home in Connecticut. But when her own parents learned what she had done, Jacob made sure they knew the full story. They refused to support her actions. Even they have limits to what they'll excuse, Jacob told me with grim satisfaction. By spring, Jacob and Stephanie had reached a settlement. She kept the mansion and a generous alimony while Jacob got primary custody of the children, with Stephanie having them every other weekend. Martha, my faithful friend who had driven me to that fateful Christmas party, was thrilled with the developments. "See what happens when the truth comes out," she said triumphantly, though I never imagined it would be quite so dramatic. To thank her for her friendship, Jacob and I invited her to join us for a proper Christmas celebration the following year. A small, genuine gathering at Jacob's new house with homemade food and modest decorations. The greatest change wasn't in my financial situation, though that certainly improved. It was in Jacob himself. The experience had profoundly altered his perspective on money and relationships. "I got caught up in Stephanie's world," he confessed one evening as we sat on his porch. "The status, the connections, the lifestyle. I forgot what really matters." "We all lose our way sometimes," I said. "The important thing is finding your way back." Jacob reduced his working hours to spend more time with his children. He started volunteering at a financial literacy program for low-income families, and he made sure to have dinner with me at least once a week, often bringing the children along. One evening in December, nearly a year after the revelation at the Christmas party, I sat by the fireplace in my cozy living room writing a thank you letter to Martha. She had moved to Florida to be closer to her sister, but still called regularly to check on me. "Dear Martha," I wrote, "as another Christmas approaches, I find myself reflecting on how much has changed in a year. You encouraged me to speak my truth, and though it was painful, it ultimately freed not just me, but my son and grandchildren as well, from a relationship built on deception. Jacob is a different man now, more like the boy I raised. The children are thriving with the consistency and honesty in their lives. As for me, I've learned that sometimes the greatest gift we can give ourselves is the courage to stand up for our worth. Truth really does set us free, my friend. Not always immediately, and rarely painlessly, but inevitably. I hope you're enjoying the sunshine and your sister's company. You'll always have a place at our table whenever you visit. With gratitude and love, Donna." As I sealed the envelope, I heard the front door open and the happy voices of my grandchildren arriving for our weekly dinner. Tyler's voice called out, "Grandma, we brought ingredients to make Christmas cookies." Ellie added, "Dad says you have the best recipe." I set the letter aside and went to greet them, my heart full. Money couldn't buy this feeling. The warmth of family, the security of honest relationships, the peace of knowing your true worth. That Christmas party had been a breaking point, but also a beginning. In losing what I thought was my son's perfect life, we had all gained something far more valuable: authenticity. And that was the greatest gift of all. Have you ever discovered a painful truth that ultimately freed you? Share your story in the comments below. And if this resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more stories of family resilience and the healing power of truth. Thank you for listening. And remember, sometimes what seems like the end is really just the beginning of something beautiful.